The chains rattled like gunfire. Late afternoon light sliced through dusty windows of Tony DeMarco's boxing gym. The air tasted of old leather and sweat. A young man stood before the heavy bag, and his fists became invisible. No wind-up, no telegraph, just explosion. The bag convulsed. Chains screamed against their mounting. Each strike landed faster than the eye could follow, leather groaning under impacts that shouldn't come from a frame that lean. The sound, sharp, relentless, machine-like, cut through the usual rhythm of the gym. Jimmy Sullivan froze mid-jab, his glove hung suspended in dead air. Eddie Morales stopped his footwork, turned, stared. One by one, every boxer in that Seattle gym went silent. Gloves dropped, jump ropes stilled. Imagine being so certain of your craft, then watching someone rewrite the rules in front of you. The heavy bag swayed like it had been hit by something from another world. The young man didn't stop, didn't breathe hard. His fists blurred left, right, left with a speed that defied anatomy. Control that whispered of years most of these men hadn't lived yet. Across the worn canvas floor, Tony DeMarco stood with his arms crossed. His jaw tightened. Pride burned behind his eyes. But what he didn't know yet would cost him everything. Tony DeMarco's jaw locked tight, teeth grinding, his pulse hammered against his collar. Across the gym floor, the stranger's fists kept blurring. Impossible speed, impossible power. The chains rattled like machine gun fire. Every eye in the room stayed glued to that heavy bag, and none of them were watching Tony anymore. 23 years he'd built this place, blood on that canvas, sweat soaked into those walls, his walls. Pride burned hotter than the cigar smoke that usually clung to his office. Tony's knuckles whitened around the clipboard he'd been holding. The wood cracked, he dropped it, crossed the floor in 8 heavy strides. His boots echoed against worn hardwood. The stranger stopped, turned, those eyes calm as midnight water. Tony made sure his voice carried to every corner. "That's cute, you're fast." He folded his arms across his chest, let the smile spread thin and sharp. But boxing is about taking a punch and giving one back harder. Karate guys fold when hit for real. Silence pressed down like a held breath. The stranger's head tilted just slightly. His hands hung loose at his sides, fingers relaxed. Then he spoke, and everything Tony thought he knew began to crack. Bruce stopped, the heavy bag swayed behind him, chains creaking in the silence. He turned, slow and deliberate. His eyes met Tony's, calm as deep water before a storm. "I don't do karate." The words landed soft, precise. "I do what works. I'd be happy to demonstrate the difference." Tony's chest swelled. Heat crawled up his neck. The leather smell of gloves and sweat pressed thick in the air. Every fighter in the gym had stopped breathing. Imagine standing there, reputation crumbling, pride the only armor left. "All right," Tony's voice cracked the stillness. "Let's spar, like contact. Let's see if your fancy kicks work against someone who actually knows how to fight." Bruce nodded once, headgear on. Tony added, "No other gear." Jimmy Sullivan moved first, pulling worn headgear from the equipment rack. The padding was thin, cracked from years of impact. Eddie Morales stepped back, creating space near the center of the floor. Canvas stretched beneath their feet. Bruce accepted the headgear without a word, strapped it under his chin. Tony did the same, fingers fumbling the buckle. Few men understood what Tony felt in that moment, the weight of 23 years pressing down, the terrible certainty that everything he believed was about to be tested. And what happened next would rewrite the rules of combat itself. They squared up, canvas creaked beneath their feet. Tony circled left, arms high, shoulders loose. Bruce mirrored him, hands low, weight balanced on the balls of his feet. No wasted motion. Tony snapped a jab, testing. Bruce's head shifted. Inches, the glove cut air where his chin had been. Tony jabbed again, faster. Bruce slipped right. The leather passed so close Tony felt the displaced air kiss his knuckles. He threw another, then another, each one textbook. Each one missing by centimeters. Sweat gathered under the headgear. Tony reset his stance and threw a combination, jab, cross, left hook. The sequence he'd drilled 10,000 times. Bruce wasn't there. The angles made no sense. Bruce moved before Tony's weight shifted, reading intention like a language Tony didn't know he was speaking. Footwork whispered across canvas, no retreat, just absence. Tony's jaw tightened. He pressed forward, jabbing, trying to cut off the ring. Bruce circled through spaces that shouldn't exist. Imagine throwing punches at smoke. Then Bruce moved in. A straight light, the impact snapped Tony's head back. Stars burst behind his eyes, his mouthguard jolted. He hadn't seen the punch leave, hadn't seen it travel. One moment Bruce's hand was low, the next, what else could that speed do? Tony rolled his shoulders, reset his stance. His jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. He exploded forward, left hook to the body, right uppercut, overhand left. Everything he had learned in 63 professional fights poured through his fists. Leather hissed through empty air. Bruce shifted angles like smoke, feet whispering across canvas. Tony pivoted through a double jab cross combination. Speed, power, ring wisdom carved into muscle memory. Bruce wasn't there. Sweat burned Tony's eyes. His lungs pulled fire with each breath. 1 minute, 2. The heavy bags hung motionless around them. Not a chain rattled. The gym had become a tomb. Jimmy stood frozen near the ropes. Eddie's mouth hung open. Tony threw a desperate hook. Air. Bruce's expression hadn't changed, calm as still water, but something lived behind those eyes that didn't belong in any ring Tony knew. Tony's chest heaved. His arms felt like concrete. Every punch cut through nothing. Bruce danced between the beats of Tony's heart, untouched, unreachable. The floor tilted slightly under Tony's feet. His world, built on leather and sweat and proven strength, was collapsing. But what happened next would shatter everything he thought fighting meant. Bruce stopped completely still. Tony's fists hovered, chest heaving. Sweat dripped from his chin onto worn canvas below. The sound echoed, a single drop in absolute silence. Bruce's hands hung loose, fingers relaxed, no guard. No stance, just waiting, his eyes locked onto Tony's. The gym air thickened, every boxer frozen. Jimmy's mouth hung open. Eddie didn't blink. Few could understand the weight of that moment when a fighter realizes the storm has only been testing him. Tony's lungs burned, his heart hammered against his ribs, but Bruce's breathing remained steady. Calm, like he'd been standing still the entire time. The stillness was worse than the movement. Tony could feel it, something coming. Something he hadn't seen yet. Everything before had been, what, a demonstration, a warm-up. Bruce's fingers twitched, barely. Tony's stomach dropped. The chains on the heavy bags had stopped swaying. No shuffle of feet, no rustle of canvas. The gym had become a held breath, everyone waiting for the exhale that would change everything. One more exchange would reveal what all this speed and evasion had been protecting. Then Bruce stepped forward. Tony threw the jab, fast, clean, textbook form honed over 20 years. Bruce's hand moved not to evade but to intercept. Fingers closed around Tony's wrist midair, locked it. Tony felt his own arm freeze, suspended in space like a fly trapped in amber. He pulled, nothing. The grip was iron wrapped in silk. Then Bruce's other hand came alive. Tap. Tony's chin snapped sideways. Light contact, but the message screamed through his skull. Tap, ribs, the air punched from his lungs. Tap, temple, his vision blurred. 1 second, 3 strikes. Tony couldn't block, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His lead hand remained frozen in Bruce's grip, useless as a broken wing. Every defensive instinct he'd ever learned dissolved into nothing. He was a statue, a target, completely, utterly exposed. 42 years of pride crumbled in that single second. Tony stumbled backward, ripping his hand free. His chest heaved, sweat dripping from his jaw. He raised his palm. Stop. The word echoed through the silent gym. I get it, his voice cracked, raw with truth. The trap, that's the key. I never had a chance. Bruce lowered his hands, waited, and every boxer in that gym suddenly understood what they'd just witnessed would change everything. Tony pulled the headgear off, leather wet against his palms. Sweat dripped from his temples, stinging his eyes, but he didn't blink. He turned to face his boxers, Jimmy, Eddie. The others lined against the ropes, gloves hanging like dead weight. They'd seen everything. His chest still heaved, but his voice came out steady. Calm. This man just gave me a boxing lesson in my own gym. He paused, letting each word settle. Using techniques I've never seen. The admission burned, but not with shame, with something cleaner, truer. Tony gestured toward Bruce, who stood silent, hands loose at his sides. Anyone here who thinks they know everything about fighting, he let the sentence hang, should pay attention. The gym erupted, gloves slammed together, voices rose, sharp, overlapping, electric. Jimmy whistled through his teeth. Eddie's eyes were wide, reverent. The heavy bags still swayed from where Bruce had struck them, chains rattling like applause. Bruce nodded once, simple, no grin, no triumph, philosophy spoken through action. Tony wiped his face with his forearm, tasting salt and copper. He'd lost the spar, won something bigger. But as the noise swelled around them, one question burned through his mind. What else had he been getting wrong all these years? Tony showed up at Bruce's school the next morning. The first session burned. Bruce controlled Tony's wrists with fingers light as feathers but absolute as steel. Trapping drills, pak sao, lop sao. Tony's forearms ached from positions boxing never demanded. Sweat dripped onto worn mats that smelled of canvas and humility. Your jab telegraphs from the shoulder, Bruce said, tapping Tony's deltoid. Feel it here first. Then release. Weeks became months. Tony's punches shortened, tightened, accelerated. He taught Jimmy and Eddie the trapping sequences between rounds, his voice stripped of the old certainty. Try it. See what happens when you control his lead hand before you counter. The gym's rhythm shifted. Boxers began asking questions instead of repeating patterns. Tony demonstrated bridging techniques against the heavy bag, closing distance without committing his chin, something he'd done wrong for 20 years. 3 years dissolved like that. His hands moved differently now, smoother, more alive. The mirror showed the same face, but the man behind it had been rebuilt from the inside out. One evening, Tony locked the gym door and stood alone in the fading light. His reflection stared back from the window glass. Everything he'd built here, would any of it last beyond him? Tony locked the gym door for the last time on a Thursday in spring. His knuckles ached. The key felt heavier than it should. Behind him, the heavy bag swayed gently in the draft, its leather cracked and faded, but still hanging where it had always hung. But the story refused to die with his retirement. Every young boxer who pushed through those doors afterward heard it. Jimmy told it first, then Eddie, then fighters whose names Tony never knew. The words changed slightly with each telling, but the core remained solid as bone. I thought I knew fighting because I knew boxing. Bruce Lee taught me that the best fighters use every tool available. The lesson passed from glove to glove, generation to generation, carried in the sweat-soaked air and the scuff marks on canvas that never quite faded. Decades rolled forward. The gym changed hands twice. The windows stayed dusty. But walk in on any given afternoon, watch a cocky welterweight throw his first combination, and someone would lean close and say, "Let me tell you about the day a 130-pound man schooled the owner of this place." Seattle, 1965. Late afternoon light through dirty glass. The day pride met truth, and truth won.